Hello. This is a presentation on the book Lost at School: Why Our Kids with Behavioral Challenges Are Falling Through the Cracks and How We Can Help Them by Ross W. Greene. The book is one that I really enjoyed, and I think it was written in a way that it could be beneficial for school professionals and really anyone interacting with children who are just starting out or who have been in the field for a long time. A central premise of the book is that kids do well if they can. And Ross Greene makes the distinction many times throughout the book that it is if they can, not if they want to, and uses that premise to discuss how many school behavioral programs focus on incentivizing good behavior and punishing bad behavior without significant thought into the impact that that's having on kids who really are struggling to do well and to respond to the expectations that are placed upon them, and how kids who can do well sometimes enjoy the rewards, but generally are simply doing well because it's easier to. Another major aspect of the book is the ALSUP, which is the Assessment of Lagging Skills and Unsolved Problems. A copy of the ALSUP is actually provided in the back of the book, and it can also be found online. So the ALSUP consists of two major components. The first is identifying lagging skills, which is done via a checklist. So lagging skills are the why of challenging behavior. And Ross Greene discusses in the book how when children have skills that are not commensurate with what's expected of them, they generally communicate that through not meeting expectations and through behaviors associated with not meeting those expectations. So if a child is having difficulty on the playground, and we've identified this as a core area that he's having difficulty, we might check off difficulty handling transitions if we've noticed that getting out to the playground or heading in from the playground or switching between activities seems to be an area where he has a difficult time. Also, I'm using he just because I chose a pronoun, but many pronouns apply, obviously. And difficulty managing emotional response to frustration could also be a lagging skill that really shows up on the playground, in addition to a variety of other settings. So if the kid is struggling with playing a game and is feeling frustrated at the executive functioning skills required to do well in that game, that might show up through behaviors. From there, we identify unsolved problems, the up portion of the ALSUP. These are the other W questions aside from the why of lagging skills. So with whom the problem is taking place, under what circumstances, in which settings, and when the behavior is occurring. So for instance, a kid might be having problems when it's time to come in from recess and problems when losing a game at recess. Now, Ross Greene notes that when we're completing the ALSUP, we don't note the behaviors that are occurring. So an unsolved problem wouldn't be hitting other kids when it's time to come in from recess, because the behavior is just the means of communicating the problem itself, and the problem itself is what Ross Greene says is important to focus on. And I agree with that. So he says to read over the ALSUP after you've done it and make sure that what you've listed actually are lagging skills and unsolved problems rather than just behaviors. This is also important when it comes time to collaboratively problem solve with the kid, because kids and people in general tend to be a lot more drawn into conversations about a mutual problem rather than their behavior as the problem. I have already spoken to this, but he notes many times throughout the book, unsolved problems should be free of maladaptive behavior. They should also be free of adult theories and explanations. So adults can have a tendency, and I certainly find myself doing it, to ascribe potential situations that could be contributing to what's going on, especially if you know that the kid is having difficult things going on in their home life or other problems that are assumed to lead to difficult behaviors. So when completing the LSAP and when discussing the problem with the kid and even with each other, Ross Greene notes that it's best not to say something like, Jimmy, it's always Jimmy apparently, has been having a very difficult time at school since his parents divorced because he misses having his dad at home. Rather, Ross Greene would want someone to say, Jimmy is having a very difficult time when completing independent assignments, and to note the lagging skills that seem to be accompanying that. So this is kind of familiar to speech pathologists along the lines of task analysis, where you really break down the task itself and determine what aspects of that seem to be most challenging for the child. So then Ross Greene goes into 3 plans, which are essentially the major ways of dealing with a problem. So plan A is the one that we see most frequently, in which adults impose their will in response to unmet expectations. This isn't always done in an openly coercive and mean way. I've certainly seen it that way, but I have also seen adults say, this isn't working, so let's do this instead, which seems very gentle and I would say is certainly ideal over blatant coercion. But as Ross Greene says, it still doesn't teach lagging skills or durably solve problems giving rise to challenging behaviors in most cases. On the other end of the line is Plan C, where the adult simply drops the expectation for the time being. And Ross Greene talks about how it may be necessary to go with Plan C sometimes if a child has a lot going on and there are other priorities that need to be addressed first. Because, again, going back to task analysis and scaffolding, sometimes you just have to meet the initial most important goals and then build from there. However, our ideal zone is in the middle, Plan B, where kids and adults work together toward mutually satisfactory solutions so that both parties' concerns are addressed. And this is particularly ideal in that collaborative problem solving such as this really can help to teach the lagging skills that the kid is lacking, especially if they've been met with a lot of Plan A themselves in their life, in which case they're more likely to not demonstrate understanding of other people's concerns and to model a lot of what they feel has been shown to them. Throughout the book, Ross Greene includes Q&A, which I think is a really cool and direct way to address concerns of the reader without having to talk around and develop those concerns. So one of the concerns that he mentions a lot of people have is about holding the kid accountable for their behavior, because Plan B truly is not coercive and really involves the kid as an equal and active problem solver. And a lot of adults, particularly those who have grown up in Plan A and are firm proponents of Plan A, tend to feel that allowing a kid to express concerns and have a say in the outcome after the kid has behaved in a manner that they're not happy with is not holding the kid accountable. Ross Greene's response, which I really liked, is that holding a kid accountable means that the kid is participating in a process in which he's identifying and articulating his own concerns or perspectives, taking yours into account, and working towards a realistic and mutually satisfying solution. I think we live in a very punitive society where we don't always hold this definition of holding a kid accountable. However, with restorative justice and conflict studies and all of these sorts of ideas that are moving more into the forefront, there's a growing focus on the importance of collaboration in solving problems rather than punishing, when in general, punishing ends up being inconvenient for both parties. So I really liked Ross Greene's definition of accountability, and I think it carries through into the adult world where adults can and should have a say in the circumstances that they feel they need for success. Next, Ross Greene lays out the Plan B process, which I was really excited about, because sometimes books give a lot of good theory and then leave it to you to apply it, and I love a good roadmap. The first step is the empathy step. Ross Greene says that sometimes people tend to move quickly through this step or skip over it, but he advises spending a lot of time in this step in order to really flesh out the kid's perspective and concerns, and to allow yourself to feel as though you're on the same page with the kid. He also points out that this step is very important for helping the kid to feel that you two are on the same page, so that it can establish buy-in for the rest of the process. He says that kids are often used to adults, quote unquote, helping them in a way that actually feels coercive and not very helpful, and that kids often take some time to really believe that this adult is in it to actually help them and wants to hear their ideas. Next is the defining the problem stage, in which you restate the kid's concerns and also define your own concerns. So it can flow pretty seamlessly from the empathy stage, in that if the kid is saying that he's having a hard time in class when he doesn't know what to do because he gets embarrassed when the other kids see him always needing help, you can discuss that and empathize with that and restate that, then move forward into saying, but it's important to me that you are having, or even better, and it's important to me that you have the opportunity to work on things independently, and that your classmates are able to do their work without being interrupted. So what can we do about that? But instead of saying, what can we do about that? Clearly, I'm not very practiced with this model yet. You move into the invitation stage where you say, I wonder what we can do about that. I wonder how we can both get those needs met, something along those lines. And the author advocates giving the kid the first chance to posit a solution. And if they throw one out there that doesn't seem very doable, for instance, if they say, well, maybe I can just not do work if I don't understand it, to say something along the lines of, well, that could be a solution, but it's important to me that you learn from the work that we're doing and move forward and try to develop other solutions together. He says that often kids end up being pretty ingenious with the solutions that they pose because they know what will work best for them, even if they need some help to get there, because language skills and self-advocacy skills and self-analytical skills are all still developing. Now, Ross Greene says that the first solution usually doesn't solve the problem durably, so it's important to end the Plan B conversation with an agreement to talk again if the solution doesn't go as well as hoped. He also says that many kids don't know what their concerns are, so the use of observation or educated guesses can be helpful to them as long as the adult is willing to let those go if the kid moves the conversation in a different direction. Finally, as we discussed before, it is important to focus on a specific unsolved problem rather than a behavior and rather than a specific lagging skill in the discussion with the kid. The kid isn't going to be able to problem solve developing a skill that he doesn't have as easily as he can problem solve managing a particular situation in which this skill is causing a difficulty. But rather than saying, I've noticed you have difficulty with transitions, it would be ideal to say, I've noticed you seem to have difficulty when it's time to come in from recess. Can you tell me more about that? I really liked this quote from the book. Research has shown that the most reliable factor leading people to change, by far, is the relationship they have with the person helping them change. And we know this to be true. I know a lot of our class has discussed this with regard to our clients about how it often is a lot easier to incite change, and also for ourselves a lot easier to find the change and grow in the way that we're hoping to when the people helping us are people to whom we feel close rather than just distant arbiters. I also really enjoyed the quote that good teaching means being responsive to the hand you've been dealt. I think it can be easy to get caught up in saying, if only this kid would just do this, we could move forward. But that's not always the case. And if it's not possible for a kid, wishing that things were possible for the kid doesn't do anyone any good. Whereas encouraging the kid and meeting needs in a way that are responsive to the needs that have been demonstrated can really set a kid up for both current and future success. Finally, with regard to other kids who might be noticing that certain kids are getting special accommodations from the teacher, Russ Greene compares these to academic accommodations in a lot of ways, just in that if there's something that can be done to make a moment easier for a kid in a classroom, even if it's working on something else when he doesn't know what to do on an assignment so he can ask the teacher later without being embarrassed in front of his classmates, then this can be beneficial and should be presented to the other students as a beneficial and just thing. I actually remember one of my teachers in elementary school having the quote, "Fair is everyone getting what they need." So I was happy to see sort of a rendition of that quote in the book. In our classroom, everyone gets what they need. I think that's both a great idea to posit to kids early on in order to encourage their own self-advocacy and to help them to be supportive and enthusiastic about self-advocacy and accommodations of their peers and those around them. It seems like a way to set up really genuinely caring adults. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. This was a very brief and somewhat scattered overview that definitely did not do justice to the wonderful book that is Lost at School. I would genuinely recommend that anyone and everyone read it, even people who don't work in a school and don't plan on working in a school. I have long held the belief that Plan A, as Russ Greene calls it, doesn't really work and does a lot of harm to kids. Myself, I sort of lived a complicated childhood in which I had a lot of lagging skills and I held it together at school and then lost it, for lack of better wording, at home because I was so exhausted and overwhelmed and unhappy. And I can really see how I think a lot of these sorts of Plan B conversations would have been beneficial for me in my early years. And I hope to be able to pass these sorts of conversations and the development of these lagging skills along to other kids so that they can meet their social and emotional needs in a more fulfilling way. Again, thanks so much for watching. I'm happy to answer any questions via email or any other medium. Thanks again.